Let's take stock of how far we've come. We identified a problem worth solving. We stress tested it against the economic quadrants, validated its viability for every stakeholder, and built a business model around it. Then we went deeper into the human layer, mapping out what each stakeholder values, what they're willing to offer, and what they expect in return. And from all of that, a complete value system took shape. The conceptual clarity is there. The why is solid. The who is mapped. But here's the question that's been waiting in the wings. How do you actually build it? How do you take all of those business expectations, all of those value commitments, and turn them into something real, something designed, structured, and functional? How do you break a big complex solution down into its essential parts, and then ensure every part connects to every other part in a way that's balanced, optimized, and coherent? That's exactly where we're headed now. This session is about the decomposed view of a complete solution, understanding what the building blocks are, how they fit together, and how that architecture shapes everything the solution ultimately delivers. Let's get into it. Let's set the stage with the solution we've been building around, the refurbished electronics circuit components marketplace. The premise is straightforward but powerful. E-waste is growing at an alarming rate, and a significant portion of what gets discarded still has recoverable, reusable value locked inside it. This solution addresses that directly. It works by procuring recyclable electronic devices, systematically extracting their reusable parts, putting them through rigorous quality control and regulatory compliance checks, and then making those refurbished components available through an online marketplace. Warranty mechanisms and assurance processes ensure that both customers and repair professionals can trust what they're buying. It's a clean, circular model that turns a waste problem into a value ecosystem. Now, let's talk about what it actually takes to build something like this from the ground up. When you decompose a solution like this into its foundational inputs and functions, you start to see just how many moving parts need to work in harmony. Let me walk you through the critical ones. It starts with cell intents of recyclable electronics. You need a mechanism to capture the willingness of device owners to recycle, because without that supply signal, nothing moves. That feeds directly into recyclable electronics collection and payment, a structured process to physically collect devices and compensate owners fairly, which is what drives participation at scale. Once collected, you need an on-site electronics inspection and evaluation system, because not everything that arrives is equally recoverable. Early evaluation determines refurbishment potential and informs the pricing offered to the recycler. Transport and storage arrangement comes next. Components are sensitive. Ensuring safe, organized movement and storage from collection point to processing facility is non-negotiable. Then comes the electronics parts complete quality check process, a thorough, standardized evaluation to determine which extracted parts meet the reliability bar required for resale. This connects to the electronics part extraction system and process, the actual technical workflow of carefully dismantling devices and isolating reusable components without compromising their integrity. Now, for programmable integrated chips specifically, you need a firmware acquisition process for extracted programmable ICs, because without the right firmware, many of these chips simply cannot function in a new device context. Alongside this, an integration readiness evaluation for both fixed function and programmable ICs ensures that extracted components are genuinely compatible and ready for deployment in target repair scenarios. All of this feeds into component marketplace inventory management, the system that tracks what's available, what's certified, and what's ready to sell, keeping the marketplace accurate and reliable. Given that electronics are environmentally sensitive, weather protection for electronics parts during storage and transit is an operational necessity, not an afterthought. Marketplace order-to-delivery management then ensures that once a customer places an order, the fulfillment chain is smooth, traceable, and dependable. Revenue management keeps the financial engine of the business healthy, tracking inflows across multiple transaction types and stakeholder relationships. Debt management ensures that credit extended across the ecosystem to partners, assemblers, or bulk buyers is structured and recoverable. Warranty management is the trust anchor. It's what makes customers and repair professionals confident enough to choose refurbished over new. And finally, scrap recycle management, because not everything extracted will be usable. Responsible disposal of irreclaimable parts closes the sustainability loop and keeps the model environmentally credible. A quick but important note here. The analysis shown across these inputs and functions is illustrative in nature. It does not constitute a comprehensive or exhaustive outcome. Real-world solution design would require deeper domain-specific evaluation tailored to the specific business and operational context. Each of these functions is load-bearing. Remove one, and you create a gap that eventually shows up as a failure somewhere in the chain. Which brings me to the thinking styles that shaped how we arrived at this decomposition. The first thinking style is what I call decompose as partial derivative. The idea here is deliberately disciplined. As you build out the solution, you ask, what happens if one critical input goes missing? You treat each key input as a variable, and you assess the risk of its absence on the overall solution. In our case, one such risk surfaces clearly around firmware acquisition for programmable integrated chipsets. Many of these chips, system-on-chips, microcontrollers, are only fully functional when paired with firmware that often lives exclusively with the original component vendor. If that firmware isn't accessible, the extracted chip becomes unusable, and a significant portion of your refurbishment potential simply evaporates. Identifying that risk is only half the job. The other half is mitigation, and the path forward here is partnership, forming deliberate, structured relationships with programmable IC vendors, built around a win-win value proposition. The vendor gets a new monetization channel from chips already in the field. The marketplace gets the firmware access it needs to unlock value. Both sides benefit. The risk becomes a relationship. That's the power of the partial derivative mindset. It forces you to stress test your assumptions before they become operational failures. The second thinking style is decompose for progressive resonance. This one is about discovery. The intent is to find inputs and functions that, when considered together, co-vary in a way that amplifies each other's value. And when that covariation reaches a resonant point, it helps the solution handle conditions that would otherwise be challenging. Here's a vivid example from our solution. The on-site electronics inspection and evaluation process, which we already need for assessing the physical condition of collected devices, can be extended with a small but deliberate addition to also check whether the original firmware for any programmable chipsets is still present on the collected device. Think about what that does. In a single integrated step, you're assessing physical condition and unlocking firmware intelligence right at the point of collection. That information directly informs refurbishment feasibility. It helps the marketplace offer a more accurate, more fair price to the recycler, and it feeds directly into the firmware acquisition process downstream, reducing dependency on external vendor relationships for devices where the firmware is already in hand. Two functions, one enhanced step. The resonance between them quietly solves a problem that would otherwise require a separate, costly workaround. This is what decomposing for progressive resonance does. It reveals the functional interworking conditions that make a solution not just complete, but elegant. So, to bring it all together, a solution built grounds up isn't just a list of features. It's a carefully reasoned architecture, where every input is justified, every function is connected, and every risk has been thought through. The economic logic is sound, the value system is human, and the design thinking, sharp. That's what it means to build something worth building. We've decomposed the solution. We have our building blocks laid out clearly. Now comes the next step, and it's a powerful one. We're going to take that decomposed view and map it onto a construct you've encountered before. The 8-part framework we explored when we were discussing thinking frameworks and putting them to real-world use. This isn't a new tool, but now we get to see it do real work. We're going to use it to reveal the relationships among all our inputs and functions, how they push the solution forward, how some of them create overhead, and how time changes the picture entirely. Let's get into it. The first dimension, inputs and outcomes that are independent of time. Start with the inputs that directly drive the solution forward, in positive covariance with our overall objective. Sell intent of recyclable electronics. The more device owners are willing to recycle, the richer the supply funnel becomes and the more choices the on-site team has to work with. More input, more opportunity. On-site electronics inspection and evaluation, sharper, more thorough inspection means better identification of recoverable parts, direct positive impact. Electronics parts, quality check process. Improve this, and you improve the reliability of everything the marketplace offers. The relationship is clear and direct. Now, not every input moves in the same direction. Some create overhead even as they enable growth. Transport and storage arrangement. Every new collection adds logistics cost. Every new batch occupies storage space. These are real overheads. But, and this is the key, these overheads are the price of expansion. The use case grows because transport and storage grow with it. So this sits in negative covariance with the efficiency metric, but the business absorbs it willingly because the payoff justifies the cost. Similarly, component marketplace inventory management. As inventory scales, so does the complexity of managing it. It's an overhead that increases with success, negative covariance, but entirely necessary to unlock downstream business momentum. Now shift to the outcome side, still time independent. Recyclable electronics collection to payment and marketplace, order to delivery management, both positively co-varying with the objective. More collections, more orders, more fulfillment, all of it maps directly to more business, which is exactly what this solution is designed to deliver. But warranty management tells a different story. It's critical. There's no question about that. Warranty is what builds trust. But every warranty claim is also a cost. It consumes support bandwidth. It puts pressure on margins. So from a business outcome perspective, as warranty claims grow, they pull against revenue. Negative covariance, important to track, important to manage, and important to minimize through quality excellence upstream. Now, the second dimension. Inputs and outcomes that are dependent on time. Weather protection for electronics parts. Electronics are sensitive. Seasonal variation, excess heat in summer, excess moisture in monsoons, can silently degrade stored components. This input capability becomes more critical as time passes and seasons shift. But it's a positive covariance relationship. Invest in better weather protection, and you protect the quality and value of your inventory. Time makes it more important, not less. Debt management, on the other hand, also time-dependent, but with a negative covariance relationship. Debt, if not controlled, compounds with time and begins to drag on operational momentum. It's a financial tool, sometimes necessary, but one that needs disciplined oversight. The longer unmanaged debt sits, the harder it pulls against the solution's forward trajectory. On the outcome side, revenue management builds progressively with time. As the marketplace matures, as trust compounds, as the customer base grows, revenue follows. Positive covariance. Time is an ally here. But scrap recycle management accumulates as an overhead. The more devices processed, the more non-recoverable material builds up over time. Managing that responsibly adds cost and operational complexity, negative covariance, but one that also carries reputational and regulatory importance. It can't be ignored. It has to be built into the operating model. So, that's the first cluster, a complete mapping of inputs, outcomes, and time relationships for our solution as it currently stands. But here's the important insight. This is not the only cluster possible. The 8-part framework isn't a one-time exercise. It's an iterative design tool. You can build a second cluster, one that inherits everything from the first and then adds to it. Let's do exactly that. Assume all the inputs and outcomes from the first cluster are in play. Now, add one deliberate, targeted new input, a dedicated firmware and driver acquisition process for extracted programmable ICs. This is a focused capability, built specifically to secure firmware access for programmable chipsets through vendor partnerships and structured agreements. With that input in place, something powerful becomes possible on the outcome side. A meaningfully improved integration readiness evaluation for both fixed function and programmable ICs. Suddenly, the marketplace can assess and certify a broader, more complex range of components with higher confidence, higher reliability, and higher value to customers. 2 new elements, 1 additional input, 1 enhanced outcome, and the entire solution moves to a higher level of capability. This is the real power of this approach. Every cluster you design is a refinement. Every refinement is grounded in the same rigorous framework: inputs, outcomes, covariance, and time. And every iteration brings the solution closer to something that is not just functional, but optimized. The decomposed view doesn't just describe the solution, it becomes a design instrument, one that helps you build smarter, iterate faster, and always understand exactly why every piece of the solution is there and how it connects to everything else. That's what rigorous solution design looks like, from the inside out. Here's where things get genuinely exciting. We've built the decomposed view, we've mapped the inputs, the outcomes, and the time relationships. And now, that structured picture starts doing something unexpected. It starts generating questions, sharp, focused, innovation-driving questions. And those questions become the seeds of the next level of thinking. Let me show you what I mean. Look at 3 elements sitting together in our framework: transport and storage arrangement, component marketplace inventory management, and marketplace order to delivery management. Transport and storage carry negative covariance. They're overheads that grow with the business. Inventory management adds its own complexity at scale. But marketplace order to delivery is a positive outcome engine. It drives revenue and business momentum. So the question that naturally surfaces is, can these be balanced? Can the negative drag of transport, storage, and inventory be systematically offset by optimizing how orders flow through to delivery? Can you design the fulfillment architecture in a way that actively absorbs those overheads rather than just tolerating them? This is precisely the kind of question that hypothetical deductive thinking is built for. You form a hypothesis. If we restructure the order-to-delivery flow in this specific way, the inventory overhead reduces by this much, and then you test it, refine it, and iterate. We're not solving it here, but the framework has just handed us a clearly defined problem space to explore, and that's enormously valuable. Now look at debt management, a time-dependent input with negative covariance. Debt grows with time if not carefully controlled, and it quietly erodes momentum. But what if the question wasn't just how do we manage debt better? What if the question was, can we design a debt-free supply chain model altogether? At first glance, that might sound ambitious, but sit with it for a moment. Is it truly impossible, or does it simply demand a different kind of financial discipline? Could collaborative awareness with partners, shared risk models, deferred payment structures, co-investment arrangements make a debt-free supply chain a realistic possibility? This is a question tailor-made for abductive thinking, the thinking style that works backwards from a desired outcome to discover what would need to be true for that outcome to be achievable. You start with the vision of a debt-free model and reason your way toward the conditions that could make it real. Another rich space for innovation opened up directly by the framework. And then there's perhaps the most technically fascinating question of all. We've already established the relationship between on-site electronics inspection and evaluation and the firmware and driver acquisition process for programmable ICs, and how together they can elevate the integration readiness evaluation outcome. But how do you actually operationalize that relationship in the field? Can you develop a risk-reduced assessment model, one that identifies the refurbishment suitability of programmable ICs right at the point of collection? And if a device passes that early assessment, can the benefit of that early validation be passed back to the recycler in the form of better pricing, creating an immediate tangible incentive for bringing in higher quality devices? This is a systems thinking challenge. It requires you to see the inspection process, the firmware acquisition process, and the pricing mechanism not as separate functions, but as an interconnected system where a change in one ripples meaningfully through the others. Design it well, and you've created a self-reinforcing feedback loop that improves supply quality, reduces downstream risk, and rewards the right behaviors at the source. Let's turn to our second example, and it's one that sits at the intersection of technology and public health. The automated detection of vector density increase solution addresses something fundamental: the root causes of health risks that arise when vector populations surge in residential and commercial localities. It does this through automated monitoring systems that detect the threat early and integrated response workflows that trigger timely, coordinated action across subscriber communities. Local partnerships ensure that treatment is delivered effectively, and adherence to locality-specific environmental SOPs ensures it's done safely and responsibly. Early detection, coordinated response, assured outcomes. That's the promise. Now, let's get into what it actually takes to build this from the ground up. When you decompose this solution into its essential building blocks, a clear picture emerges of just how many interconnected capabilities need to work in harmony. Let me walk you through each one. It starts with vector density detection software from video streams, the intelligent core of the entire system. This is the capability that analyzes live camera footage to identify and measure vector density in real time. Without this, there is no detection, and without detection, there is no solution. That feeds directly into software for analysis and action initiation, because detection alone isn't enough. This layer interprets what's been detected, assesses the severity, and triggers the appropriate response workflows. It's the decision-making engine that turns data into action. To make the detection capability deployable at scale, you need a partnership with compatible camera vendors. The detection software needs to work seamlessly with cameras already installed or easily deployable in localities. So vendor compatibility isn't a technical detail, it's a go-to-market prerequisite. Both software systems need a foundation of secured and reliable hosting, separately considered for the detection software and the analysis and action initiation software. For detection software hosted outside of the camera device itself, this hosting must also address privacy. Residents need assurance that their video streams are handled responsibly. For the analysis and action platform, reliability is paramount. A system failure at the moment of a vector surge is not an option. The response chain only works if the right people are ready to act, which is why partnership with treatment and insecticide providers is a critical input. These are the on-ground partners who deliver treatment when the system fires. Their readiness, their product quality, and their response speed determine whether the automated trigger translates into a real-world outcome. Sales coverage over localities is the growth engine. The solution's impact scales directly with the number of localities subscribed, so building a structured, focused sales operation to onboard communities is foundational to the business model. Marketing campaigns with resident communities create awareness and drive adoption at the ground level. Residents need to understand what the solution does, why it matters, and why they should trust it, before they'll invite it into their community. Brand reputation and customer base develops over time as localities experience the solution's effectiveness. This isn't built through advertising alone, it's earned through consistent delivery, and it becomes the most powerful driver of organic growth. Managed operations over the complete life cycle ensures that the solution doesn't just launch well, it sustains well. From onboarding a new locality, to managing routine monitoring, to coordinating responses, operational excellence across the entire life cycle is what keeps subscribers confident and committed. Effectiveness, assurance, and quality control is the credibility anchor. If treatment outcomes are inconsistent or poor, the solution's reputation erodes rapidly. Rigorous quality standards applied to both the detection capability and the treatment delivery are what separate a trusted solution from a failed initiative. And finally, management of environmental side effects. Any treatment involving insecticides carries environmental responsibility. Proactively managing and minimizing side effects isn't just ethically important, it's essential for regulatory compliance, community trust, and long-term sustainability of the initiative. A quick but important note: the analysis shown across these inputs and functions is illustrative in nature. It does not constitute a comprehensive or exhaustive outcome. Real-world solution design would require deeper, context-specific evaluation tailored to each deployment environment. Every one of these elements is load-bearing, and understanding how they connect and what happens when one weakens brings us to the thinking styles that shaped this decomposition. The first thinking style is decompose as partial derivative, and it asks a disciplined, uncomfortable question at every step of the design process. What happens if this input goes missing or loses its quality of control? Let's apply it here with two vivid examples. Consider effectiveness, assurance, and quality control. Now imagine that control over this input slips. Treatments become inconsistent, outcomes become unreliable. What follows? The localities that experienced poor results won't renew. Word spreads, and suddenly, sales coverage over localities, the growth engine of the entire business, takes a direct hit. The ripple from one weakened input travels fast and far. So what's the mitigation? Develop SLA-oriented partnerships with treatment and insecticide providers, structured agreements with defined performance standards, accountability mechanisms, and consequence clauses. You don't just hope for quality, you contractually anchor it. Now take the second case. Consider secured and reliable hosting of detection software, specifically in scenarios where that hosting happens outside of the camera device itself. The moment video stream data leaves the device and travels to an external server, a legitimate privacy concern is raised. Residents may hesitate, local governing bodies may push back, and once again, sales coverage over localities gets negatively impacted, this time not by poor outcomes, but by eroded trust before the solution even gets a chance to prove itself. The mitigation here is equally deliberate. Design and offer privacy-managed deployments as an explicit option, on-device processing where possible, clear data governance policies where cloud hosting is necessary, privacy as a feature, not an afterthought. Two different vulnerabilities, two targeted mitigations, both discovered through the same disciplined thinking style, stress testing each input against the question of what if this isn't in control. The second thinking style is decompose for progressive resonance. And where the partial derivative mindset looks for risks, this one looks for amplification opportunities. The question here is, which inputs and functions, when they work in concert, create a resonant effect that's greater than the sum of their parts? In this solution, a compelling example emerges around the software for analysis and action initiation. When increased vector density is detected, the system fires a trigger, initiating the treatment and spray response across the affected locality. That's the expected action. But now, apply progressive resonance thinking and ask, what else could co-vary with this trigger usefully? At the exact same moment the treatment response is initiated, the system could simultaneously signal the partnered treatment and insecticide providers to increase their supply availability for the affected localities. Detection triggers treatment, treatment triggers supply readiness. Two functions co-varying in response to a single event, creating a seamless, self-reinforcing response chain that's faster, better coordinated, and more effective than either function could achieve independently. That's resonance. That's what happens when you look not just at what each function does, but at how functions interwork to handle real-world conditions better together than apart. Two thinking styles, both grounded in the same decomposed view of the solution, one revealing the risks hidden in missing inputs, the other revealing the amplification hidden in functional connections. Together, they push the solution design beyond the obvious, beyond the adequate, and towards something that is genuinely robust, genuinely differentiated, and genuinely ready for the complexity of the real world. That's the power of disciplined thinking, applied with purpose. We have our decomposed view, the inputs, the functions, and the outcomes laid out clearly. Now let's do something powerful with it. We take that decomposed view and map it onto the 8-part construct. The same framework we've used before to reveal the hidden relationships within a solution, not just what drives what, but what helps, what hurts, and how time changes the picture. Let's work through it systematically. First, the inputs that are actively pushing the solution forward. The positive covariance inputs, vector density detection software, and software for analysis and action initiation. These are the technical heartbeat of the solution. Improve their accuracy, their speed, their reliability, and the solution becomes more effective. More effective means more trust. More trust means stronger brand reputation and wider sales coverage. The relationship is direct and compounding. Partnerships with compatible camera vendors open up the deployment landscape. Every new camera vendor brought into the ecosystem creates new business model possibilities. New localities become reachable, new deployment configurations become viable, and each successful deployment strengthens the brand further. Partnerships with treatment and insecticide providers work similarly, but on the response side. More partners means more choice. The ability to select the most effective provider for a specific locality or to extend coverage into entirely new geographies. Both outcomes feed directly into better results and broader reach, all 4 of these inputs pulling the solution unmistakably forward. Now, 2 inputs that are essential but carry overhead. The negative covariance inputs, secured and reliable hosting, both for the detection software and for the analysis and action initiation platform, present the same dynamic. Every new installation requires fresh hosting capacity. That capacity comes at a cost. It's not optional, but it is an overhead that grows with scale. The important nuance here is this. The use case drivers will always absorb this cost because the alternative, inadequate hosting, undermines the entire solution. It's a necessary overhead, but its relationship with the use case's efficiency metric is negative, recognized, accommodated, and managed, but never ignored. Now shift to the outcome domain and start with the positive covariance outcomes. Sales coverage over localities and marketing campaigns with resident communities, both directly aligned with growth. More localities subscribed means more impact delivered. More community awareness means more localities ready to subscribe. These 2 outcomes feed each other, and together they feed the solution's core objective with compounding momentum. But effectiveness assurance and quality control, critically important as it is, sits in the negative covariance zone. Every quality check, every correction, every remediation process consumes time, resources, and operational bandwidth. The more quality issues surface, the heavier the drag on revenues and operational efficiency. This doesn't mean quality control should be reduced, quite the opposite. It means the solution must be designed to minimize quality failures upstream so that the correction overhead downstream stays as small as possible. Now bring time into the picture, starting with the time-dependent positive input. Managed operations over the complete life cycle. This is a capability that becomes more important, not less, as the solution matures and scales. Localities at different stages of their subscription lifecycle have different operational needs. Seasonal variations, equipment wear, partner performance drift. All of these require ongoing, attentive lifecycle management. Invest in this capability consistently, and it pays back in sustained effectiveness and customer retention. a clear positive covariance relationship, one that rewards long-term discipline. On the negative side, SLA-oriented partnerships with treatment and insecticide providers. SLAs are powerful tools, but they become harder to maintain as operational complexity grows. Business volumes expand, partner priorities shift, commitment levels can drift. Over time, the effort required to enforce and sustain SLA compliance increases, and that friction creates a negative pull on the solution's overall momentum. It's a manageable challenge, but one that demands proactive relationship management and contract design. And finally, the time-dependent outcomes. Brand reputation and customer base. This is the slow burn asset that grows with every successful deployment, every satisfied locality, every community that chooses to renew and refer. Time is genuinely an ally here. A solution that delivers consistently earns a reputation that becomes self-sustaining, and that reputation is ultimately the most valuable outcome of all. But management of environmental side effects accumulates as an overhead with time. As the solution scales across more localities and more treatment cycles, the environmental footprint grows, and so does the responsibility to monitor, manage, and minimize it. It's a negative covariance factor, not because environmental responsibility is wrong, but because managing it at scale requires real resources, and those resources are a drag that must be planned for. That's the first cluster, a complete relational map of inputs, outcomes, and time dependencies. But, as we've said before, the first cluster is never the only one. Consider a second cluster, one that inherits everything from the first and adds a single, deliberate new input: privacy-managed deployment. This isn't just a technical feature, it's a trust signal. In a solution that involves video stream analysis in residential and community spaces, privacy is a legitimate concern, and proactively addressing it through privacy-managed deployments removes a significant adoption barrier. The outcome? An improved brand reputation and customer base, one that's built not just on effectiveness, but on trust. Localities that might have hesitated now feel confident. A second cluster, one additional input, a meaningfully stronger outcome. And that's the iterative power of this construct. Each cluster is a refinement. Each refinement is grounded in the same rigorous framework. And each one brings the solution closer to something that doesn't just work, but excels. The decomposed view isn't a static description. It's a living design instrument, one that keeps revealing new opportunities to build smarter, scale faster, and deliver more confidently. That's what it means to design with clarity and intention from the inside out. Now, every relationship we've mapped, every tension we've identified, they don't just describe the solution as it is. They point directly to where the solution could be better. And the questions they trigger are exactly the kind that lead to the next level of innovation. Let me show you what I mean. Look at three elements sitting in close relationship with each other: secured and reliable, hosting of detection software, privacy-managed deployment, and improved brand reputation and customer base. We've established that hosting carries a negative covariance overhead. It grows with scale and costs money. We've also established that privacy concerns around video stream hosting can become an adoption barrier. But here's the question worth sitting with. Can these two challenges be addressed together in a way that doesn't just neutralize the negatives, but actively strengthens brand reputation? What if the way you design your hosting architecture, on-device processing, edge computing, minimal data transmission, simultaneously reduces hosting overhead and resolves privacy concerns? And what if that privacy-first architecture becomes a visible, marketable commitment that localities actively seek out? Overhead reduced, trust earned, reputation built, all from one integrated design decision. This is precisely the kind of question that systems thinking is built for. Seeing the interconnections clearly enough to find a solution that serves multiple objectives at once. We're not solving it here, but the framework has handed us the exact problem space to explore, and that clarity is enormously valuable. Now look at effectiveness assurance and quality control, and the tension it creates. We know that quality failures generate overhead. We know that SLA-oriented partnerships are designed to prevent those failures, but that maintaining SLA compliance gets harder as operational complexity grows over time. So the question becomes, can the combination of SLA-oriented partnerships and managed lifecycle operations actually deliver a near-overhead-free model of assured effectiveness? Is an SLA violation-free operational chain genuinely achievable? Or does it demand a level of discipline and coordination that's unrealistic at scale? Could collaborative awareness with partners, shared dashboards, real-time performance visibility, joint accountability frameworks create the kind of operational culture where violations become genuinely rare rather than just contractually penalized? Again, systems thinking as the lens. Not just fixing individual failures, but redesigning the system so that the conditions for failure become increasingly unlikely. Two questions, both emerging directly and naturally from the structured visualization we built. And that's precisely the point these examples are here to demonstrate. The decomposed view, the covariance mapping, the time domain analysis. None of this is just an intellectual exercise. It's a precision instrument for discovering where to innovate and which thinking style to apply when you get there. The questions are the foundation, the thinking frameworks are the tools, and the solutions are waiting to be found. Let's turn to our third and final example, and this one hits closest to home because it solves a problem we've all experienced firsthand. The virtual trial room addresses peak capacity infrastructure constraints in retail through an innovative digital alternative. It captures customer images and garment data to generate an accurate 360-degree digital visualization of fit and appearance, giving shoppers a realistic, immersive try-on experience without ever stepping into a cubicle. The entire process is fully consent-driven, with customers in complete control of their images and data. And once they've found their look, they can share their digital try-on instantly across messaging platforms and social channels. Practical, personal, privacy-respecting. Now, let's get into what it takes to build it. When you decompose this solution into its essential building blocks, a clear and interconnected architecture emerges. Let me walk you through each component and why it's indispensable. The foundation is the virtual trial software, the intelligent core that processes customer images and garment data to generate accurate, realistic digital visualizations. Without this, there is no virtual trial. It's the capability everything else depends on. That software needs a physical home in the retail environment, which is where the virtual trial device with camera and connectivity comes in. A purpose-built device deployed in-store that captures the customer data needed to power the experience seamlessly and accurately. Behind every device, you need technical support, ensuring uptime, resolving issues, and maintaining the quality of the experience consistently across every retail deployment. A device that fails at peak hour defeats the entire purpose. Sales coverage over retail hub localities is the growth engine. The solution's impact scales with the number of retailers who adopt it, so a focused, territory-aware sales operation is foundational to reaching the right stores in the right locations. Marketing campaigns with clothing retailers create awareness and drive onboarding. Retailers need to understand what the virtual trial room does, why their customers will value it, and why it makes business sense, before they'll commit to a subscription. Retailer subscription management keeps the commercial relationship structured, transparent, and mutually accountable, ensuring retailers are correctly onboarded, billed, and supported throughout their subscription lifecycle. Brand reputation and customer base builds over time as retailers and their shoppers experience the solution's value. This earned credibility becomes the most powerful driver of organic growth and new retailer acquisition. Social media integration for end users is a distinctive differentiator. The ability to instantly share a digital try-on look across social channels turns every user into a potential advocate, extending the solution's reach far beyond the store floor. End-user consent management is non-negotiable. Capturing customer images requires explicit, informed consent, and managing that process cleanly and transparently is both an ethical obligation and a trust-building cornerstone of the solution. Privacy assurance and enforcement backs up that consent with rigorous data governance, ensuring that customer images and data are handled, stored, and protected in full compliance with privacy regulations. In a solution this personal, privacy isn't a feature, it's a foundation. Device maintenance and insurance protects the physical infrastructure of the solution, covering hardware wear, damage, and replacement to ensure continuity of service across all retail deployments. And finally, management of digital threats. A solution that handles customer images and personal data is a target. Robust cybersecurity, threat monitoring, and incident response capabilities are essential to protecting both users and the solution's integrity. A quick but important note, the analysis shown across these inputs and functions is illustrative in nature. It does not constitute a comprehensive or exhaustive outcome. Real-world solution design would require deeper, context-specific evaluation tailored to each deployment environment. Every element here is load-bearing, and understanding how they connect and what happens when one weakens brings us to the thinking styles that shape this decomposition. The first thinking style is decompose as partial derivative, and it asks a deliberate, probing question at every stage of the design process. What happens if this input goes missing or loses its quality of control? In this solution, a particularly revealing example surfaces around retailer subscription management. Imagine a pattern emerging. Retailers subscribe heavily in the run-up to festival season, when footfall is high and the solution's value is obvious. But once the peak passes, subscriptions lapse. Then the cycle repeats the following season. Subscribe, lapse, subscribe again. On the surface, this looks like demand, but underneath, it signals a structural misalignment. The subscription model doesn't reflect the reality of how retailers actually experience value from this solution. Forcing a fixed subscription onto a seasonally driven use case creates friction, reduces retention, and ultimately limits the solution's commercial scalability. The insight this thinking style surfaces is precise, and so is the mitigation. Develop a demand-linked subscription model, one that flexes with the retailer's actual usage patterns, scaling up during peak periods and stepping down during quieter ones. The retailer gets a model that fits their business reality. The solution provider gets sustained engagement rather than repeated churn. A structural problem, resolved through a structural insight. The second thinking style is decompose for progressive resonance. And where the partial derivative mindset looks for risks, this one looks for amplification opportunities. The question is, which inputs and functions, when they work in concert, create a resonant effect that's greater than the sum of their parts? In this solution, a compelling example emerges around social media integration for end users. The primary purpose of social sharing is clear. It lets shoppers post their digital try-on looks, express their style, and get feedback from their social circles. Valuable for the end user. But now apply progressive resonance thinking and ask, what else could co-vary with this usefully? What if each shared image included a brief, elegant introduction to the retailer whose collection the customer is trying, and a subtle acknowledgement of the virtual trial room solution itself? Suddenly, a single social share by one customer becomes a triple win. The end user gets personal branding, the clothing retailer gets organic, authentic marketing exposure, and the solution provider gets brand visibility, reaching potential new retail clients through the very customers already using the solution. Social media integration and marketing campaigns with clothing retailers, two functions that on the surface serve different purposes, are now co-varying in a way that amplifies both simultaneously. One resonant moment of sharing delivers value across three stakeholder layers at once. Two thinking styles, both grounded in the same decomposed view, one revealing the hidden risks in missing or weakened inputs, the other revealing the hidden amplification in functional connections. Together, they push the solution design beyond the functional, beyond the adequate, and towards something genuinely differentiated. That's what it means to think with discipline, design with intention, and build with purpose. We have our decomposed view. Now, let's put it to work, mapping the relationships within the 8-part construct to understand what's pushing this solution forward, what's creating drag, and how time changes the picture. Start with the inputs driving positive momentum. Virtual trial software and the virtual trial device with camera and connectivity. These two work in tandem as the core value delivery engine. An excellent software experience, paired with a well-designed device setup, directly improves how users engage with the solution. Better engagement builds stronger brand reputation, stronger technology credibility, and a growing customer base. The relationship is direct and compounding. Now, two inputs that are essential but carry overhead. Technical support consumes bandwidth with every issue raised, and that bandwidth has a cost. End-user consent management is a legal necessity, but the declaration and consent process often triggers questions, hesitations, and concerns from users that require careful handling. Both are non-negotiable. Both create friction, negative covariance, absorbed willingly because the alternative is operational and legal instability. Now the outcome domain, starting with the positive drivers. Sales coverage over retail hub localities and marketing campaigns with clothing retailers, both directly aligned with growth. More retailers reached, more awareness created, more subscriptions activated. These outcomes feed the solution's core objective with clear, compounding momentum. But privacy assurance and enforcement, critical as it is, sits in negative covariance territory. Every privacy audit, every compliance check, every data governance operation consumes resources and pulls on revenues. The solution must deliver on privacy, but must also design upstream to minimize how often that enforcement layer is stress tested. Now bring time in, starting with the positive time-dependent input. Retailer subscription management grows in importance as the solution scales. More retailers, more subscription life cycles to manage, more renewal moments to navigate. But the relationship is positive. Better subscription management means more stable, more predictable revenue, and a stronger foundation for continued growth. Time rewards good subscription discipline. On the negative side, device maintenance and insurance. Devices age, usage volumes climb. Retailer attentiveness to device care tends to slip over time. The cumulative effect is a maintenance burden that grows with scale and gradually creates drag on operational efficiency. A necessary investment, but one that compounds as a negative covariance factor with time. Brand reputation and customer base, the slow burn asset that time builds naturally through consistent delivery. Every satisfied retailer, every delighted shopper, every social share adds a layer. Time is genuinely an ally here. But management of digital threats accumulates as an overhead with exactly the same time dependence, and in the opposite direction. As the solution scales and its user base grows, it becomes a more attractive target. Cybersecurity demands intensify. Threat management complexity increases, a negative covariance factor that must be planned for, not reacted to. That's the first cluster, complete, rigorous, and actionable. But as always, the first cluster isn't the last word. Consider a second cluster, one that inherits everything from the first and adds a single targeted new input, a demand-linked subscription model, one that flexes with seasonal retail patterns rather than fighting against them. The outcome? An improved brand reputation and customer base built on a commercial model that actually fits how retailers experience value. Reduced churn, deeper trust, stronger advocacy. One additional input, a meaningfully stronger outcome. The solution, refined. That's the iterative power of this construct. Each cluster is a step forward. Each step is grounded in the same disciplined thinking, and each one brings the solution closer to its full potential. Here's where the structured thinking pays its biggest dividend, because the relationships we've mapped don't just describe the solution. They generate the questions that lead to the next level of innovation. Let me show you exactly what I mean. Look at the relationship between demand-linked subscription model and improved brand reputation and customer base. We've introduced the demand-linked model as a targeted response to seasonal subscription churn. The logic is sound. A model that flexes with retailer behavior should improve retention, but should is not the same as will, and that's precisely the question worth pursuing rigorously. Does a demand-linked subscription model actually build a stronger, more loyal customer base, or does it inadvertently signal to retailers that commitment is optional, making the relationship feel transactional rather than strategic? Does the flexibility attract more retailers, or does it reduce the perceived value of the solution? These are the kinds of questions that hypothetical deductive thinking is built for. Form a clear hypothesis. If we introduce demand-linked subscriptions, retailer retention will improve and brand reputation will strengthen. Then design the tests, track the signals, and let the evidence confirm or challenge the assumption. We're not solving it here. But the framework has handed us a precise, testable question, and that clarity is where meaningful innovation begins. Now look at another tension sitting in the solution: privacy assurance and enforcement and management of digital threats. Both are overhead-generating functions. Both grow in complexity with scale. And here's the question worth sitting with. What if they didn't have to be managed as two separate burdens? Could a sufficiently robust privacy assurance and enforcement architecture simultaneously serve as the frontline defense against digital threats? In other words, could one well-designed system do the work of two? This is a systems thinking challenge. It requires stepping back and asking, what are the structural conditions that make digital threats possible in the first place? And could the very mechanisms that enforce privacy, data minimization, access controls, encrypted storage, consent-driven data handling, also reduce the attack surface that threats exploit? And then push further, is a near overhead-free model of privacy and threat management genuinely achievable? It would demand a different level of operational discipline. But could collaborative awareness between users, retailers, and the solution provider create a shared security culture, one where everyone understands their role in maintaining a threat-safe digital environment? That's not just an operational question, it's a design question. And it's one that systems thinking is uniquely equipped to explore, because the answer lies not in any single component, but in how all the components interact. Two questions, two thinking styles, both emerging directly and organically from the structured visualization we built together. And that, once again, is precisely the point these examples are designed to demonstrate. The decomposed view reveals the pressure points. The covariance mapping tells you which ones matter most, and the thinking frameworks give you the tools to transform those pressure points into genuine innovation opportunities. The questions are the foundation, the solutions are waiting to be built. And that brings this session to a close, and the ground we've covered is substantial. We started with conceptual clarity, a well-understood problem, a validated business model, a mapped value system. And in this session, we took the crucial next step, breaking the solution down to its essential building blocks, understanding how every piece connects to every other, and seeing how those connections shape the solution's overall architecture. That's what solution decomposition delivers, not just a list of components, but a relational understanding of how a solution truly works from the inside out. And with that understanding firmly in place, a new and exciting question emerges. How do you push beyond what you've designed? How do you discover what's possible beyond the current solution boundaries? That's the domain of outcome exploration analysis. And that's exactly where we're headed next. The blueprint is built. Now let's explore what lies beyond it.